Welcome to the second part of 9.2. I'm going to talk a little bit more about how you can use the quadratic formula. I'm going to start with an application problem. This one is a basic one. We'll get into more in 9.3. So in this application, notice it even gives me an equation. Ooh, X is the number of rented units, P is the profit. And then it says find the number of units that must be rented each week to produce zero profit. It says zero profit. Well, profit's P, so where does zero go? Right there. And sure enough, I get 0 equals 50 squared plus 1200x, 50x squared plus 1200x minus 2150. Can we use the quadratic formulas? Yes, but I would hate to have to use those numbers. They're huge. Can you make them smaller? Well, we can factor out 50 from all these terms, and then we can just remember zero product means that means 50 equals 0 or this equals 0. 50 clearly doesn't equal 0. I'm just left with this. So I'm just going to use this to identify which my roots are or what the solutions are by just focusing on that part. Those numbers are much smaller. They're much easier to use. So go ahead and pause the video and use the quadratic formula to solve that equation. Welcome back. Hopefully you plugged in, said A is 1, B is 24, and C is negative 43. Well, that gives me negative 24. 24 squared is 576. This is going to give me positive 172. Add those together and get positive 348, which I can reduce slightly. I can pull a 2 out, and that gives me, I can again cancel, and I get just left with 12 plus or minus square root of 187. Okay, well, we're not done, but I can now use this. Now, this gave me the answer sort of, but really this has two answers. It's 12 plus the square root of 187 and 12 minus the square root of 187. So to determine what we got to do, we got to figure out if one of these is negative. So we're going to have to estimate or approximate. Well, the square root of 187, if you grab your calculator and punch it in, it's approximately 13.67. That's an approximation, not exact. Now, if I add these two approximations together, I am going to get 25.67, which is bigger than 0. That's okay. So that one's a viable option because remember, you can't really rent out negative units. That'd be kind of odd. But if I do this minus 13.67, again, I'm just using that approximation. That ends up as a negative number. Uh-oh. Because it's a negative number, that means that that is not a solution. So that means my answer is the number of units have to be run out as 12 plus the square root of 187. So I have to be exact, because this is a math class, we are being exact. But that we're using the approximation to really get us an idea about how much it is. It's about 25. And this is going to be useful later on. We're actually going to graph in one of our later sections. All right, let's talk about something else that we can actually use. It's something called discriminant. Yes, we're going to discriminate in math. Now, the discriminant of a quadratic equation is b squared minus 4ac. I want you to think for a second about the quadratic formula. What part of the quadratic formula is that? Remember, it's the value that's underneath the square root. So here's how it's going to play a role. It's going to actually tell me what kind of solutions and how many. So if that number, that b squared minus 4ac, is bigger than 0, which it has been in all of our examples so far, it's going to be two real answers. If it's less than 0, remember I'm taking a square root of a negative number, which means it's not real, so it's imaginary, but still there's two of them, two imaginary answers. And if it's equal to 0, I got 1. I want you to think about why that is. Why do we get these by just using this b squared minus 4ac? Well, this means it's plus or minus 0, which is just plus or minus nothing. It doesn't change the value. So let's practice, and I just want you to see how this works, because if I have this equation, I'm going to check the discriminant. I don't need to solve it, but to use the discriminant, what form, since that still uses the b squared minus 4ac, what form do we have to have it in? Standard form. So Let's get it in standard form. Now we can use A is 4, B is negative 20, and C is 25. So by putting it in standard form, I can now use the discriminant. So B squared minus 4AC, what is that equal to? Go ahead and pause the video and find B squared minus 4AC. Well, notice that's 20 squared minus 4 times 4 times 25, which is 400, minus 400, which is 0. So based on our last chart on the previous slide, that would be only one real solution. So we can have equals 0. All right, this one, I want you to find the type and the number of solutions. Not solving it, just use the discriminant. Go ahead. Well, hopefully you did that. So first, remember we had to put it in standard form. Then we have A, we have B, and we have C. Okay, did you get to this point in time? If not, pause the video and go and keep going and find the discriminant. If you did, well, then you have B squared minus 4AC, which is negative 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times, that should be another 4. That's my bad. And that's going to give us 9 minus, it actually should be not that. It should actually be 32, but it doesn't change the fact it's a negative number. And it's a negative number means it has 2 imaginary solutions. So this is wrong. That should be 32, and that should be negative 23, but you can harass me about my typos later. So 2 imaginary solutions if the discriminant is less than 0, which means we kind of would have a slight problem how we normally work through these problems. All right, what about this? Can you determine the type and number of solutions of this one? Well, again, we can use the discriminant. Nice part, this is already in standard form. So my A is 4, B is negative 5, C is negative 2. Plug those in and we get negative 5 squared, 4, 4, and negative 2, which comes out to be 25 plus 32, because notice a minus and a minus. So I end up with positive 57, which is bigger than 0, so I have 2 real solutions. So this whole idea behind this is just the ability to use the discriminant without having to solve. I mean, if you're trying to solve, use the quadratic formula, you'd have to find the discriminant anyways. So this just kind of saves you a little bit of time. So make sure you kind of run through this, get a little bit more familiar with it. Let me know what questions you have.